Good evening, everybody. Monday morning quarterback, episode 84. Hope you guys had a great Monday and start to your week. It certainly was busy here, getting the trailer unpacked, things put away, organized, and full steam ahead on all the rest of our chili bowl shocks. Getting that rolling for leaving again on Friday. So it's been a busy week. Certainly enjoyed seeing a lot of you in Tulsa last week. Was a great week for Team CSI and everybody supporting our products. The week turned out better than I thought. going into A Main Day, I told Jordan on the way to the track, I said, we really need to win 1, 2 would be good, 3 would be awesome. And to walk out of there with 4 was certainly amazing and exceeded our expectations. That's 14 we've won in the last 3 years, so we've only lost 4. And for guys that and a company that went there for a lot of years trying to win our first one, the last 3 years have certainly been amazing. I didn't really feel like we were in great position to win 4 going into Saturday, but the guys and gals using our product certainly rose to the occasion, so it was super awesome. Started off with Alex Bright winning the stock non-wing race, pretty dominating fashion. That's the first time we've won on a Hyper chassis. Hyper just started working with us probably a year and a half ago, and so a lot of the Hyper cars that are up in Pennsylvania on our product are either shocks that they've purchased through TSL with Timmy Buckwalter or Roland's Performance with Jimmy Roland. So we're starting to get more shocks on Hyper cars. The Hummer team works directly with us. They work with Jake here a lot. And so it was cool to see him win, dominating that stock non-wing, and he really had a shot to win Outlaw non-wing too. Came from like 14th to the 3rd in about 10 laps, and then the cushion was pretty treacherous. He caught the cushion the wrong way and kind of got sideways and then got tattooed there and knocked the front end out. But then the junior sprint race, I think that was the next one we won, was junior sprint. And Jet Barnes started on the pole of that thing and led the whole race. He was chased by another California car for much of the race. It was cool to get that. Our little buddy Levi Hillier had a great week there. In his last junior sprint start, he got 4th. So it was good. We had a lot of fast kids in junior sprints. Lincoln Smith, a quarter midget customer of ours from Ohio, he made his first Tulsa shootout and ran 7th in the A main there in junior sprint. So good run there. And then restricted was next, and Jade Avedisian put a move on in traffic to win that. That was pretty cool. Brennan Crouch, a customer of ours, started on the pole and got the jump on Timms and kind of drove away from Ryan Timms, who was everybody's odds-on favorite to win it. And he had the race in control, and then lap traffic got really thick, and the top 3 were kind of under a blanket, and Avedisian just made a spectacular move in traffic to go from 3rd to 1st in one corner. And once she got the lead, she kind of was smooth sailing there the last couple laps, and Crouch got 2nd. So we were 1-2 and restricted. And then our last win of the night was an Outlaw. And going into the feature, I kind of felt, our best shots were with a couple of the young guns, with Emerson Axum and Corey Day. They were the closest guys we had starting to the front, starting in the 2nd and the 3rd row. And both of them were driving a really good race, really smart race. That race is a lot like Chili Bowl's Saturday A main, where it's on the bottom for a long time, and then it'll move up. And it ended up going back to the bottom this year, but I felt like both those guys were being really patient and kind of just riding, waiting for the track to widen out. Both those young guys are cushion pounders, and they usually make up a lot of ground once it gets to the top. And unfortunately, Day never got the opportunity. A lap car got into Kunzman, who was running 2nd, and kind of plugged up the front stretch there, and Axum barely sneaked through, and Day didn't. So at that point, Emerson was kind of our only shot, our only guy that was right up front there. A lot of our other customers started farther back. And, first guy to get to the top, drove around Jonathan Beeson, which isn't easy to do, a guy who runs up front at the Chili Bowl every year. And when the track moved back to the bottom, was wise beyond his years, moving to the bottom and taking Beeson's line away and going on to win that. So certainly an awesome night. We're thankful for all of the customers that were there using our products, everybody who we were able to service throughout the week. I lost count of how many shocks we dynoed, freshened, tuned, well over 100. So it was very busy for us, but thank you to all you guys. So Steve Osborne and Rick Remore, thanks for tuning in. You guys are regulars. Anybody that's tuned in and you have questions, fire away. More than happy to answer any of those. I know I've gotten a few texts and Facebook messages about the USAC rules talk today. On the quarter midget side, I don't even want to call it a meeting because we didn't really get to speak. You could send an email with questions, but John Darby basically was the dictator of that, and I don't know. I almost left the meeting more confused than when I entered. So apparently what they're calling a helper spring is legal, but a bump rubber is not. And basically what they're calling a helper spring is the conical spring that like Advanced has, that they would run on the shock shaft. So to me, that's a bump spring. And they're saying that's legal, but a bump rubber is not. And the rules clarification there was a bump spring, or helper spring as they're calling it. If you step on the front bumper, the frame will hit the ground. It'll push through that, but it won't a bump rubber, is what they said, even though it will push through a bump rubber. I think John Darby's a little confused on the bump rubbers he's familiar with in NASCAR and the bump rubbers we're using. Typically, a stock car is going to use a bump rubber that's, a similar diameter to like a skateboard wheel, where what we're using is super, super soft and can be compressed through. In some instances, it's softer than that spring that they're allowing. So I asked the question if I could come up with a bump spring kit for Daytona, if that would be allowed. They said no, bump springs are not. Helper springs are, but they're kind of the same thing. So I'm going to try to get more clarification on that for you guys. In my opinion, if they're outlawing it, they need to outlaw all of it, because it's just going to cost customers more money. If we develop a spring kit that was within their rules and what they're allowing Advance to do, now everybody who has bump rubbers is going to have to buy that, and that just seems silly. If they're going to do away with it, do away with it. But that's just my opinion. They also talked about the weights and why they went up on the weights. They're not budging on that. So my suggestion to folks, I know me with Hudson being so small, we have over 70 pounds of lead in the car for Junior Honda. So the only way to do that safely, if you're putting the majority of that on the belly pan, is that belly pan is going to need to be bolted in the car. So Zeus buttons and the Zeus springs are going to fail when there's that much lead on the car. So my suggestion would be to bolt the belly pan in if that's how much weight you have to run. And it is an advantage to be able to add all that weight, because you can put it where you want, but it's confined within the main frame rails of the car, and so there's not too many places you can put it. But that would be my suggestion as far as that. Eric Long, who had the biggest bill at the shootout and they should get a hoodie? I'm not really sure. Chili Bowl, usually that's easy for us to identify, because if you get through a bad string of luck at the Chili Bowl, or you just have a rough go of it, every time you bang front wheels in a midget, it bends a shock shaft. So there's certainly been guys over the years that we've put a handful of shock shafts in their front shocks throughout the week of the Chili Bowl. But, there was really nothing major as far as biggest bill. There wasn't somebody who just tore up a bunch of stuff, but Dave, thank you very much. Got to hang out with Dave quite a bit last week at the shootout. He was there helping his customers, and selling his new 600 knee guard, and we certainly sold a lot of his receiver and switch helmet mounts since that was mandatory at the shootout. So we sold a bunch of those, and it was good for everybody to see Dave. Wes, I had a one-on-one with Darby and Darlington, and it didn't go over very well, and that might be why some of this has happened. Basically, we ran our bump travel gauge on Colin Mitchell's car at Darlington, and we were told to take it off, that it hadn't been approved, even though there really is nothing to it. We've had it on display at every national race all year. We'd sold dozens of them. Wasn't something we were hiding, but I was told that was a mechanical form of data logging, having that on the car with an O-ring measuring up and down travel for the shock. So, I don't know what the best solution is. I see this from both sides. As a manufacturer, we got stuck with a bunch of inventory on the bump rubber thing not being notified. And then as a participant, for a number of years when we ran house cars, and now with my own son, I just hate when rules come out that are not warranted, and that they're not going to be able to police. I know somebody in that call asked about internal bump stops and the rules with that, and I really don't feel that's a rule they can police. I guess they're going to start taking shocks apart in tech to inspect for that, because certainly just the shock compressing all the way is not going to stop somebody from running an internal bump stop, because there's ways around that. And he's talking about the technology of the bump rubber and the cost associated with that. I'm looking at the cost to the end racer if they're having shocks taken apart in tech and then having to pay somebody to put them back together. I don't know. I don't really want to pass judgment. I'm sure they had the best interest at heart when they wrote these rules, but I think they could have consulted with people that had been in the industry for decades, like your Ron Stanleys and John Nervos and Tom Fitzes and myself, Corey Phillip, these people that have a vested interest in the sport and have been around a long time. Tad Pfizer, guys that have been here and seen it all, and they're going to be much better to determine why those rules weren't in place, when and why rules should be changed, than a family that's just been in the sport for a few years. So, and certainly the tech director there is very new to quarter midgets, and so if I was in his spot, I would definitely lean on the people that had been in the sport for a long, long time. Mike's question is having to add 70 plus pounds to make weight in senior classes. So I don't like to just bolt a steel plate in. I feel like it can take some of the chassis flex out. Certainly when I would bolt the floor pan in my car, the bolts are loose, so the car can still flex. The holes are oversized so that the floor pan can move a little bit side to side. Obviously, you don't want the floor pan moving greatly under the kid's feet, but you also don't want a piece of steel bolted solid from side to side and diagonally in that chassis that's going to change the rigidity of the chassis. So that would be my recommendation there. Wes, yeah, I've always said to compete at the highest level of quarter midgets, 4 shocks won't do it. Certainly if you're racing club races and even regionally and your tracks are similar, you can get away with 4 shocks. But there's going to be some tuning shocks needed from flat to bank to parking lot if you want to compete at the highest level. So typically for me, it ends up being 6 to 8 shocks per car to cover all those scenarios and have tuning. That's no spares. That's just all the different tuning shocks I would need for different instances. And we face that a lot here in the Midwest because we go everywhere from Macachee and Kokomo that are really flat, low grip to Kalamazoo and Mini Indy, which are high banked, high grip, and kind of everything in between. Toledo's pretty rough. So 6 to 8 shocks is typically what you're going to need if you're wanting to compete at the highest level. Alex, have you played with internal bump stops? We have. We've definitely played with internal bump stops, internal droop limiters, and all sorts of stuff like that. That's currently, without going into too much detail, it's currently a part of our dirt midget package. After last year's Chili Bowl, we felt like we were a little behind and needed to do some things to step that up, and we completely revamped our dirt midget program. Went away from the 3 twin tube and the gas right rear to all gas with some limiters in the front shocks, and we refined that over the summer, and I think we won almost 50% of the USAC midget races this year, between the Clausen team and Petrie's team. So feel really good about our midget package, hoping to have a good Tulsa shootout here next week. So I feel a lot better going into this year than last year about the strides that we've made. Really, Mike, from like a flat track to a bank track, quarter midgets, we're going to start taking rebound out of the right side shocks. It also depends on the class. How much rebounds in the left rear, how fast we're transferring weight to the right front is going to vary from a bank track to a flat track, because the right front will naturally be loaded more on a bank track. So if you have specific questions with the class and everything, I'd be more than happy to answer that. But that's kind of a general rule of thumb. So speaking of development, we did run our new X4, which we showed at PRI. It's our new 4-way adjustable shock, and I had a couple goals with that shock. One was getting true double adjustability that didn't require bleed through the base valve. I feel like that at times isn't ideal. We've certainly had a lot of success with that shock. We've won a lot of races with our X2, but I feel from a dynamic standpoint that wasn't the best way we could go about it. So that was one goal. The other goal was more stability on the cushion. And another goal was to not overcomplicate it where the end user didn't know what to do with all these adjustments. So basically the low speed, compression, and rebound are cockpit adjustable, or have the ability to be cockpit adjustable. And then the high speed has to be turned with a wrench. And basically with the high speed, we give you a normal track condition, a rough track, and an extremely smooth track, and that's how you will adjust your high speed. So that shock worked very, very well. Chance Crum ran it for us, and Gary Taylor on the Farrell cars. They were able to give us very good feedback. Those are a couple guys that have raced a wide variety of vehicles and have very good sense of what they want and could give good feedback. And then Jake Hagopian ran it on his car. I think he was by far the fastest outlaw car. Just things didn't fall his way, but he was so confident in the shock, he put it on his house car, which Corey Day started 6th in the feature with, and I feel like he was going to be in a position to contend for the win until he got knocked out before halfway. So we certainly feel really good about that. We're going to switch those over to some midget builds and get some more track time with it next week, and then probably take them to Florida and finish our development on that before we release that to the public, hoping to have it available around June. So Wes, your shocks are here, and that's on my list earlier this week to get with you guys on exactly what you need. There's a pile of stuff here. We had about a 2-week lull where there wasn't many shocks to do. We were getting stuff built for PRI and catching up on shop things, and I got back from Shootout, and I think every single repair bin out there is full. So Kevin likes the X4. John Farrell liked the X4. Farrell actually gave me back his X2. I guess he didn't want it. He just wants to run that X4. So again, we still have some refining things we need to do on it. Certainly happy with the initial feedback and results. I think it's going to be a really robust shock. It is going to be expensive, right? But repair costs on it are going to be much cheaper than a standard shock, because it's not an adjustable shaft, and it's not an adjustable rod end. So you're looking at a $40 shaft versus a $110 shaft, and you're looking at a $30 rod end instead of a $105 rod end. So repair costs will definitely be less too. So Kyle, have we ever gotten into sedan racing shocks? We do a few different shocks for folks who do like autocross and some SCCA stuff. Mainly they're Penske shocks that we work on for those folks. With our product line, it's not something that we've gotten into. We take care of some rallycross shocks for a team. But yeah, we haven't got into that with our own product line at the moment. We're pretty covered up with our core markets, and might be something we do in the future, but at the moment don't have any plans for that. So nobody has razzed me about my Saints. You guys must really feel bad for me. I was in quite a state of depression. We drove all night, left the shootout at about 2 in the morning, drove all night back to Indiana, got home about noon, took a shower. Hudson and I got our jerseys on. We were ready, and I think we were a little more prepared than the actual team was. So was a bummer. I'll be in another state of depression when number 9 announces his retirement, because I think that's coming here in the next week or two. I could be wrong, but I just got a feeling that he's ready to be with his boys and tired of getting pounded into the ground. But it was a good run. Hopefully we'll get another shot again next year. But a little bummed out today. Kevin, go Hawks! Yeah, my family are huge 49er fans, but I'll cheer for your Seahawks. You got a big one having to go up to Green Bay. That'll be a challenge. So, Dave, anybody that knows me needs to let it go. Yeah, guys here at the shop, they'll kind of razz me during the season if we take a loss, but nobody said anything here today either. I think they knew that I take my Saints really seriously. It was a bummer of a night. So as soon as the game was over, I told my wife I'm going to bed. Hadn't been to sleep in a day and a half, and 5:30 last night, turned the light off and didn't get up till 5:30 this morning. So I needed to catch up on my sleep, and I woke up wondering if that was just a nightmare that they lost, but unfortunately it was true. So, all right, no other questions. We certainly appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll try to do some more lives next week and another pit walk. I intended to do more at the shootout, but we went with a smaller staff than normal because we had so much work to do back here, and we were pretty busy the whole time. But we'll try to do some more lives. There won't be any Monday morning quarterback next week because they're racing on Monday at the Chili Bowl, but we'll certainly do one when we come back. And please like and share, and let your friends know they can catch all the old episodes here on Facebook or our YouTube page, and you can subscribe there. Appreciate you guys. If you want the new shootout hats that we got made with the gold CSI stitch, those are on the website now. So thank you, everybody, and hope you have a fantastic week.